Welcome back to New Record Day. My name is Ron, and in this week's episode of Tuesday Tech Talks, Danny Ritchie of GR Research walks us through an important discussion of you might have great gear, throwing it into a room without any kind of treatment at all, not a great way to get great sound. I love this episode. It's really informative, and he shows a down and dirty, cheap way to get yourself started with acoustic treatment. Enjoy the show. Comments down below.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another Tuesday's Tech Talk. Today we're going to be covering room treatment, and we're going to be looking at a very cheap and effective DIY room treatment that you guys are going to love. And the reason I'm doing this is recently I've been getting a lot of emails sent to me from you guys asking me about your room. And you'll send me a picture of the room and say, what speakers would you recommend for this room? And some of them, I have to admit, I look at the pictures and I think, there's not any speakers I can recommend for that room. It doesn't matter what you put in that room, it's not going to sound good. You have to spend some effort. You have to put some time, a little bit of money into treating the room. The room is part of the system. You can't just plop a bunch of speakers into the room and think this speaker's going to sound this way or that speaker's going to sound that way, and it's, and trying to choose what's going to be good for you and ignore the fact that you have an empty room or a room with bare walls or bare windows and things that are going to just ruin the sound. You have to address those issues. It reminds me of going to some of the shows, and this is common within most of the shows, and I've been to shows from CES in Las Vegas to shows in Washington State to Atlanta, Georgia, and all over the country. And it's the same with any show you go to. There's going to be companies that show up with no room treatment. There's going to be companies that show up with $250,000 systems. They're going to plop it all down on the floor in an empty hotel room and turn it up real loud and hope you like it. And it's kind of almost a running joke amongst a lot of us in the audio industry as to which companies are going to show up with high dollar systems and bring no room treatment, and they don't set the room up properly, they don't do anything, and it sounds horrible. And it's sad. I know a lot of people go to these shows thinking, I want to hear what the really high-end stuff is like. I want an impression of what these $100,000+ systems really sound like. And they leave very disappointed, or they think it's a joke because it sounds horrible. I'll give a few examples. Wilson Audio makes fantastic products, great speakers. And I've been to their rooms at the show where they've got their large speakers a foot off the wall. They didn't bring any room treatment. They've got fantastic gear hooked up to it, and the sound is overwhelmingly boomy to the point where you can't even stand to listen to the music because it's just a boominess throughout the whole room. It was horrible. And nothing against those guys' products. They make great products. But if you're going to exhibit, you have to set this stuff up well to exhibit. Another one that stands out to me, Rado makes fantastic speakers. They had an $18,000 mini monitor. It was in a small room at RMAF, and they had a huge hump at 50 hertz. I'll never forget it. It was just a boominess in the room. I'm thinking, come on guys, this is a mini monitor. Plug the port, go to Home Depot, get some rolls of insulation, stick in the corners, do something, man. Get that boominess out. Because the rest of the speaker really sounds pretty good, but you're ruining it. And the worst of the worst of my memory at a show was walking in and hearing the big MBL speakers, which were in a room that was too small for the speakers. And those are great speakers. I love the speakers if they're set up well in a treated room. But in an untreated room and cranking up Keith Don't Go at ear bleed levels, it was unbearable. It was, get me out of this room. Another one that comes to mind is Mcintosh. Mcintosh had a huge exhibit there at CES, and they had a lot of really expensive equipment set up in a really small room, big line source speakers, huge amplifiers. I think it was 4 amplifiers. And admittingly, Mcintosh makes really good products, especially the electronics. But in the exhibit, they decided at some point they needed to show everyone what 2,000 watts sounded like, and they just the volume up real quick in an empty room with no room treatment, and everyone just went, ah! all at the same time, and that wasn't a good. It wasn't a good exhibit. It wasn't really showing off the capabilities of the products in a way that made people want to say, "Yeah, that sounds fantastic," because of the way it was set up and the presentation that they put you through for the whole 15 minutes. Sometimes that stuff at shows just really doesn't work. But there are companies at the shows that set up really well. They do a good job, and they bring in room treatment, and they do fantastic. And they're the ones that are usually doing well at every show. So what to do? What to do to treat your rooms? Don't be like those guys at the show. You have to spend some money on your room. So there's about 3 different ways or 3 different things I want to discuss. One is tube traps. Tube traps is a way of absorbing low frequency energy. If you've got bass boominess in the room, these large diameter tube traps are what's necessary to soak up bass energy. You're not going to soak it up with the stuff that you see behind me. These are for the walls. You'll need to put it in the corners of the room typically, sometimes along the front stage, and it's amazing the difference that it can make. And I'm going to put a link in the title section of this video for you guys, where you can go and look at some tube traps that I've made, and you can see how it's made and how easy it is, and you can make some of those for yourself. The other thing you can do is diffusion. Diffusers break up the sound and diffuse things so that it's not a reflection off of those surfaces, and that stuff's really important, especially with open baffle speakers. We do those a lot. Diffusion helps tremendously, and typically you want to do some diffusion along with absorption. But what I want to show you today is a kind of a down and dirty, easy to build wall panels that'll help absorb some of the mid to higher frequency ranges. I've got a whole wall of it you see behind me here. These are just some of the panels that we used to take to shows back in the day. This is made from compressed fiberglass, and we would just take this stuff to the show and just open it up and set it up against the wall, and we would kind of set 3 or 4 of these down the walls and just break up those wall reflections. It worked out really well. So this stuff is super easy to make. What you want to do is go to the stores that service the guys that do air conditioning systems. This is what they call fiberglass duct board. It is compressed fiberglass. It has on the back of it, it has a silver backing on one side. And I know this is really ugly on the back side, but you're not going to see the back side. What I did with this is burlap, and I just wrapped burlap around sections of this stuff and just glued it down. Just used some wood glue and just glued it down, and it's never moved. It's been on there for 14 years or something, maybe 12 years. Easy to make. What you can do is you can wrap your fabric around this stuff and just use duct tape. Just tape the fabric tight on the back side, and you can cut them into small squares. You can cut them into big squares. Whatever you want to do, you can mount these things on the wall. You can mount them on the ceilings. Your wife says, "Oh no, I don't want a bunch of stuff on the wall," and you have a bunch of white bare spots on the wall. Just go get white bed sheet material from Walmart. Wrap it around these duct boards and mount it to the wall. You're not going to clutter up the wall at all. It'll look the same color as the wall. If you get real creative, you can kind of pick up colors and patterns within your room and get real decorative with it. And this stuff helps a lot. I mean, it really helps break up and absorb a lot of that reflection and quietens the room. What you really want is you want a quiet room. You want to walk into it and you want to almost hear yourself breathe when you get into that room. You want it so quiet that you're away from everything. All the noises are gone. Turn the music on and listen to the music. And I know a lot of you guys are still thinking, well, I'll just use room correction. I'll try and fix it. No. Room correction does not work. It does not fix these issues. It can help in some situations. But if you've got a 3 kHz reflection off the sidewall, room correction is just going to turn the overall balance down in that position at 3 kHz. And while it may sound a little bit better, if you move over a foot in either direction, now you may have a hole at 3 kHz and a peak at 1500 or 4000 hertz, because every different place in the room, the reflections are arriving in different times, and they're either in phase or out of phase. If they're in phase, they're creating a peak. If they're out of phase, they're creating a hole. and it's usually one or the other. What you really want to do is put something on those walls to treat it, to soften it, to knock that loudness, that reflection out of it. Same goes for that low frequency range. A lot of guys try to use room correction to control that, and you can use some room correction down low because it's more omnidirectional, and it'll attenuate the level across the board and make it sound more balanced. However, you still have low frequency bouncing through the room 2 and 3 and 4 times. That's still creating standing wave issues. You're still creating a boominess. You're just bringing the levels down. What you want to do is put tube traps in those corners and things and absorb that low frequency energy. You want to take that boominess away. You want to smooth out the response by not having it reflecting so many times through the room. Trust me, it's worth it. You can have a system at a moderately budget price point that sounds every bit as good or better than all these high dollar systems you may hear at the show that are thrown into an empty room. You can do this. Consider the room as a big a part of the system as anything else in your system. Put a little effort into it. These are easy to make. They're cheap to make. Just some compressed fiberglass duct board and some material. It's that easy. Guys, give it a shot. See what happens. Hear what happens and let me know. And last but not least, I have started collecting photos from what I see on Facebook and on the internet of high dollar systems, usually 6-figure and up systems, that are plopped into empty rooms. And some of the pictures are embarrassing. It's $250,000 worth of gear, and a lot of times it's really nice gear. But it's in a room where you see a bare wall behind everything. You've got tile floors, you got windows down one side of the room or both sides of the room. There's some scary photos. There's a lot of it out there. And every time I see one, I just grab it and think, I got to save that. Well, at the end of the video here, I'm going to just have Ron throw up pictures of those rooms. You guys can just scroll through them and look at poor examples of rooms. And you may see some you've seen before. You may see gear you recognize. Nothing against the manufacturers of the gear. It's all about the room and the setup. So look through those, have fun. You can stop it and fast forward through some of it if you want. But that's it for this week. If you have some questions, let me have them. I hope this was helpful, and see you guys next week.